to do with the fatherhood, to do with how your relationship is with your partner, relationship with money, with your levels of fulfillment. And it kind of opened up a really, I say can of worms, that often sounds bad, but it opened up a new kind of door for me to realize there's so much stuff for a man, but ultimately we kind of feel like it leads to, do you have a level of fulfillment? Because it doesn't matter what you have in life, what toys you have, how much money you've got in the bank, etc. If you're fulfilled or you're unfulfilled can be such a kind of, a huge issue for you.
Oh, man. So today I have Anthony Astbury on the show. In 2016, Anthony left a 20-year career working as a trader and a broker in the city of London to go off in search of life for more fulfillment and more impact. Anthony relocated to the Cotswolds, where he lives with his life partner, Emma Louise, and their 2 sons. Anthony has represented the UK in obstacle course racing world championships. He's also competed in the Man vs. Mountain and the Dirty Weekend. It's the biggest obstacle course race in the world. His journey of self-improvement and personal discovery led him to specializing in coaching men to master their mindsets. And in 2018, Anthony launched the Whole Man Academy, which connects men all around the world through live and online events. He has a popular podcast, does weekly newsletters, online courses. He does some one-to-one mentoring, and he also has a 3-day retreat. You're listening to the Revive Couple Podcast. We're Michael and Laura, and together we'll explore everything relationships, personal responsibility, feminine and masculine dynamics, communication, and just some all-around real and raw conversations.
Drawing from our 18 years together, with a bit of sarcasm, humor, tears, a few and lots of love, we deep dive into the male and female perspectives on relationships and navigating the highs and lows of life together. Sit back, grab your love mug, and let's get into today's conversation.
Anthony, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here. It's nice to sit down and connect with a man with a similar mindset to talk about man stuff.
Hey, I like it, man. It's awesome to see you again. I was on yours a while ago, and it's just it's great to have these conversations. And like I said, it's really nice to be with some like-minded people and have some good convos. It's funny enough you said men's work and like-minded. So men's work, it was my first question coming out of the gate. It's a bit of a buzzword, and I'm kind of in that world right now. And like, what does it mean to you, or what do you see it as?
Yeah, I think up till probably around 2016, it didn't really mean anything at all apart from going to the gym. For me, that was about as much as the men's work. That was the inner and the outer work. And then I kind of started during my own time of starting to feel unfulfilled working in the city, which I'd done since I was 18, so nearly 20 years of that. And I'd basically started listening to podcasts, fun enough. And it was my partner, Emma, that said to me one day, "Oh, I should really listen to podcasts." And I was like, "Nah, I haven't got time for that," not knowing what it was. And then I started listening to a guy called Andy Murphy, who's an English guy, but based out in the US, who talks about men's mindset. And then a guy called James Swanwick, who's from Australia, and he started talking about Tony Robbins. And I was like, who's this guy? So I signed up for an event and ended up going through the whole Tony Robbins kind of Date with Destiny in Miami and Unleash the Power Within, Life and Wealth Mastery. But that kind of set me off on that journey of realizing there was so much more to being a man, to do with the fatherhood, to do with how your relationship is with your partner, relationship with money, with your levels of fulfillment. And it kind of opened up a really, I say can of worms, that often sounds bad, but, it opened up a new kind of door for me to realize there's so much stuff for a man, but ultimately we feel like it leads to, do you have a level of fulfillment? Because it doesn't matter what you have in life, what toys you have, how much money you've got in the bank, etc. If you're fulfilled or you're unfulfilled can be such a kind of, a huge issue for you.
Oh man, you just nailed a whole lot there. And I like it. I like I said, we're very like-minded. I'm on the same page with you with all of that, especially like relationships. That's obviously what my wife and we work on, Laura. And it really is, right? It's like, where does being a man fit into that? And how do we see ourselves being that man in that relationship, and especially career, right? Like we work so hard and we redline ourselves, or we just push the limits for so long and stress our bodies so much and stress our minds. And then it has all these adverse effects on fatherhood, on our relationships, on just the person we are, on our bodies. Like it's crazy how easy it is to justify running ourselves down because we're doing it for the greater good of the family or trying to make more money or whatever that looks like.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is so many. We always say with the whole Man Academy, which we'll get onto, but there's so many kind of segments to the slice of man pie, as it were. And like you say, you got your finances, your career, your health. You could call it wellness, all the different segments. And I think it's got more and more demanding for men, especially when you've also got social media. So there's a lot of comparison with other men around, be it men's bodies, be it men who've got, they're standing in front of nice cars or nice houses, or whatever it is that they're sharing, means that actually you're kind of subjected to a lot more success than you probably were before, which leads to comparison. And I know there's that saying, I don't know where it came from, but comparison is the thief of joy, because you generally compare yourself to people that are doing better than you, not worse than you. And that can lead to that kind of perpetual, I need to do more, be more, earn more, make more, prove more. And sometimes it's good to know that you're all right as you are.
Yeah, exactly, right? Because that social media world just destroyed, what is it, the last 10, 15, well, 10 years for sure, 15 years
Yeah,
of, yeah, you thought you could be doing very well. You are doing very well, but you look at the next guy, you're like, hey, I want what he has. I want that body. I want those six pack. But no one knows that Instagram model story. Like, yeah, he's got a six pack, but that guy isn't. Well, maybe like that's his job for one. He doesn't have a
yeah.
career. He doesn't have kids. I don't know what his relationship is. Like, that's his job, is to make those abs pop out all day. That's all he has to worry about. His eating, whatever that looks like, right? Nobody knows that.
That's exactly it. And there's 2 points to that. One was I don't know if you heard of a guy called Daniel Priestley, but he is the CEO of Dent Global, and helps companies scale bigger, and author of different books. Really, really nice guy. And I've interviewed him on the podcast before and met him in London at an event. But I remember at that event he spoke about, he knew, example, like there was a fitness, you could say like a personal trainer or fitness model guy on Instagram who had like 2 million followers, but was earning absolutely nothing from it. So, you'd look online, but like, wow, this guy's got a great body. He's doing so well. He's got all these followers. He gets loads of likes and etc. But behind the scenes, the guy's like, I'm broke. So you're like, okay. So again, from the outside, it's selective sharing, because you think that guy's killing it, and actually he's killing himself. And then I remember it was only a couple of months ago, there was a great segment on, again, maybe it was on Instagram, I can't remember, where they took a guy who was clearly in good shape, but he took a photo with his shirt off, just kind of standing there, quite a big guy, and looked like he had a bit of a pot belly and slightly pasty and etc. And then they were like, right, what we do is we're now going to shave his chest. He's going to work out for 10 minutes. We're going to change the lighting. We're going to bring the lighting from the side. He's going to get kind of pumped up. Again, shaving his chest. I think he maybe cut his hair and stood completely differently. And this guy suddenly looked like a real warrior physique. And they're like, that's 20 minutes. But that guy and that guy is the same guy. But that you'll see the perfect physique with the great lighting and the sculpted abs. But actually, this is real life here. But so many guys can't see that and are looking at that being like, I need to be like that. Now, there's nothing wrong with wanting to have warrior physique, and that's all good. And I've gone to that stage myself. But again, you're like, that's not what people look like all the time with the lighting and everything else. So yeah, comparison is a danger these days.
Yes, absolutely. I guess that kind of leads into what drove you to start the Whole Man Academy.
Yeah, I mean, when I'd left the city again, I'd gone down the route of personal development, and yeah, in early 2018, it was that thing of like, how can you have more impact? And what is it? Trying to link something you enjoy talking and working on, something that you're knowledgeable about. And there's an old saying, do something you love, and you'll never work another day in your life. And it was about getting guys together, because I mean, for one thing, like with mental health, across the world, but let's just take the UK, it's something like 75% of suicides are men. Now, why is that? Many different reasons, but one of the big ones is that guys don't get together to talk, or don't talk, just hold it all in. So that was one of the reasons. Was I knew people myself who have taken their own life, and again, on the outside, you'd be like, hey, this guy's got the money, the family, the job, etc., but there's something going on. And that was one reason. And secondly, there's nothing for, it's funny because when you start a business, people tell you that you should kind of, look around, and if lots of other people are doing it, there's obviously money in it and you can do it. But I looked and was like, do you know what? There's no personal development for men in the UK, for one. And I asked several people I knew after I'd been to these events, and I was like, name me the top personal development people that are, and generally it's for men and women, but let's talk for men. And of course, you're like, well, Tony Robbins in the US, and then they reel off a few others, and I'm like, what about in the UK? And even my friends who were really into personal development were like, oh, I think I saw a guy once. I was like, okay, if you think you saw a guy once, you don't know. But there's clearly a huge market for it. But for me, combining encouraging guys to get together to talk, which really helps, especially if they got issues going on or they just want to do better in life, with the personal development side of doing the inner and outer work to look at all the segments we spoke about, to bring each level up so that you become hopefully a better person yourself and a better person to kind of be around.
Oh man, that's awesome. I mean, you nailed it, right? With so much of that. And there's just nobody to talk to. Or I shouldn't say that, but most men feel like they can't talk to anybody because we're just so far removed from the, those hunting packs, those having those mentors, having those elders to look forward, like to talk to, right? About problems.
Yeah.
And there's so much honor in wearing that ourselves, right? Or being so recluse that I'll figure out this problem myself, but it can be so overcoming and obviously, like you said, a lot of men take their lives because of it, right? And just feel like they have nowhere else to turn.
Great example. This week, I did a talk, last week, I should say, at kind of the Soho House, which is the world famous kind of private members club, and they've got several in the UK, which we've done events, Whole Man Academy events at before. But I was asked to go in and speak to a big group of their male staff, and it was a mixture of guys, but a lot of them there are like groundsmen and working in that kind of not desk bound or desk jockeys, you could call it. And let's say 25, 26 guys in the room. My second question was, who's been to an event for men before that doesn't involve the pub or football? And there was, I think, one guy out of 25, 26. And that kind of tells you something, because I bet if you'd have lined up a lot of the women, a lot of them will have probably gone to something. But it just shows you for us that there's, I always say the biggest challenge is getting bums on seats. So what I mean by that is I could set up an event in London and bring on 5 brilliant speakers in motivational stories, inspirational stories, life-changing, what have yous. That's not difficult. The content is easy. It's getting the men to want to come along.
Oh man, I know. Me and Laura were trying to get our feet wet in that whole area, like while we're still in London, right? And talking to everybody, I had really good ins with a lot of people, and like you said, I had people that people would want to listen to, but trying to get anyone to commit to coming to your event or anything was like pulling teeth. If it didn't, like you said, if it didn't involve alcohol or some sort of sporting event, it was like, yeah, what we got stuff to do. We can't be there.
Well, and that's the thing. Again, if it was the Whole Woman Academy, it would be easy. But when it's the Whole Man Academy, it's a totally different prospect. And I would say our first event was actually at Soho House in London, but not for the company itself, but actually, we privately hired it. But, that first event, nobody knew I didn't even know what it was going to be, but we had like 25, 26 guys come through the door. But even then, I didn't actually know whether people were going to turn up, because even though it was a lot of friends, people say they're going to come and then they don't. And then, we had 25 of that event. Then we did another one. Then our biggest event was, we had like 65 guys in the room at number 1 Savile Row, which is the home of Geeves and Hawkes, which is the London, I'd say the world famous like tailor. But what we made sure every time is we created an experience for men. So it wasn't you're coming along to and I always pick a crappy hotel conference room with wanky carpet and chairs that don't match, and everybody's just like sitting there cold. Soho House would be really comfortable chairs, lots of wood, a whiskey bar, great coffee, etc. We had South Place Hotel, which is a really cool kind of hotel in the center of the city, the financial district, but you feel like you're in Miami because it's really slick and quite sexy in there. Really cool hotel. And then Geeves and Hawkes, which is an iconic building. So what you're doing is you're getting guys to come along for an experience, not just I'm going to a talk.
Oh man, that's definitely the way. Well, it'd be the way to get me for sure. Like, ooh, we're at Soho House, let's do this.
Yeah,
That's awesome. We've been kind of talking about it already, but I've been talking with a lot of entrepreneurs lately and just about struggles and how things have been. And I guess we already talked about a few, but what are some more struggles that you had to overcome really, and how you dealt with them with starting that Whole Man Academy, and how everything's kind of panned out?
Yeah, the couple of, we could do a whole hour on that, because being an employee for 20 years, I had no idea how to run a business. And I didn't start it as a business. I started it as a thing, as a nice idea. And I call it a little big idea because it was like, it started off as this little thing of we could do it, but I did have these ideas in my head of what it could become very quickly. But one of the things, firstly, I've learned is surround yourself with not just the right people, but the people that, have similar values to you, because and work ethic as well. Now it's good to have a yin and yang of different people, but I'm very I was described as a relentless action taker a while ago by someone, which is very nice of them. But I'm not here to just take part. I'm here, like I know people say, I'm not here to take part. I'm here to take over. But I'm not here just to kind of run it for fun. I wanted it to become something that moved around the world and was recognized as a really important resource for men. So I would be happy to, even podcasts, I will get up at whatever time in the morning it is to record a podcast. If I need to start till 11 or 12 at night to finish an e-letter, I'm not like, oh, never mind, it can be done that time. I'm like, it's going to get done. And I guess to start with, I didn't have those people around me. I have people that be like, yeah, it's a Friday. Can we pick it up on like Tuesday, Wednesday? And I'm like, no. Like, we need to get this done. So that was one thing. Second was having the right vision, because Tony Robbins was the example of, if you hit a golf ball just 1 millimeter off, it might not seem it, but after a while it's a mile away from where it should be. And that's what I found is I kind of had my rough vision of where we wanted to go. And the people that were involved with it to start with had a equally, noble vision, but one wanted to go very much on the mental health side. I wanted to be personal development with the mental health under that personal development umbrella, because that message of mental health puts some men off, understandably, and it would have put me off when I worked in the city. But personal development, building resilience and confidence as a man became much more inviting for me. And so many guys I speak to, when I say, if we stood up, when I worked in the city with 300 guys and was like, ting, 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 who wants to come to a mental health event, guys? They'd be like, fuck off, or, you just get abused. Whereas if you said, we're going to an event where it helps build inner strength so you can be stronger mentally and physically, guys, and I would have been like, yeah, here's my debit card, let's go, I'll pay for that. And that's where the same thing, but just a different a different branding or different message, different take on it.
Oh man, you nailed it with that too. Like, it's exactly it, right? Like, I came from that world of construction, right? For being a builder, and same thing, Hey boys, you want to come with me tonight to a mental health seminar? It's like, yeah, no, I'm not gonna be the most popular guy around, right? So you nailed it. It really, it sucks, and that's the way men see it. Like, I'm here in central Alberta in Canada, so we're kind of in the heart of, cowboy country, oil country. This is where stereotypical men are men, right?
Yeah.
And talking about vulnerability, and I met with a lot of like, are you sure? I'm able to kind of pull it off because of my past and kind of the way I guess the way I look too. I look a little dodgy, I guess would be the best way to say it. If there's an airport, security will come to me, trust me.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, and then vulnerability shown as a weakness. It's the craziest thing, right? And I preach on it. I talk to a lot of people about it. It's a superpower if you know how to use it and use it correctly. But that's here in central Alberta, that's in Canada. What do you see over in the UK and in Europe? Like, is it kind of that same mindset, or is it a little bit more, I don't want to say liberal because that's farthest thing that we are, but a little bit more open to the idea?
I think it depends on it's 5 years ago, I think it's very different to where we are now. And there's a lot more. If you think the whole Man Academy running since, let's say, it's 2018 was our first event, but it's towards the end of the year. So let's say it's 19, 20, 21, now it's 22. So 3.5, 4 years. And I think it depends on what age a man is as well, what decade of his life, because, the 20 somethings are being brought up with the Instagram model of, it's okay to be vulnerable. To an extent that is good. But then there's the over vulnerability, and I know you kind of nailed it when you were on our podcast, of some people feel like, I would call it oversharing, and you're like, you need to find the right people. And also there's a line between, if you've got some struggles and you want to talk to someone, or just going online for attention. And that's where I sometimes sit, where you see people posting stuff and I'm like, fuck, like there's something going on there, but why are they posting it online? Is it because they need help, or is it because they want attention? Which is always it's an interesting one. But I see it more like guys who, for us with the Whole Man Academy, I'll be 44 this year. So, really we're going for guys in their like probably 35 and upwards. I often think in your 20s and up to a mid 30s, maybe you're kind of too busy like having fun to really contemplate life. And then maybe when you get to your 30s, then, either kids come along or you've spent 10 years in a job, or you start to maybe look around and be like, is this it? Or do I want to do this for 20 or 30 years? Then you go to the guys that are in their, 45, 50. And I always think maybe for those guys, you get to, you realize that you're not going to live forever because your parents are getting to that, maybe that, I know it's general, but the late 70s, 80s, and maybe they're, some of them are dying or becoming ill or frail or etc. And it makes you think, well, hold on a minute, if I'm 45, 50, yes, I might have 30 or 40 years left, but I'm halfway through my life. And am I where I want to be? And I guarantee that a lot of people go, no, I'm not.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's what I think a lot of people do. And I talk to a lot of people about saying that, young guys, hey, can you talk to my teenage kid? Can you talk to my, early 20s son? And it's like, yeah, we can talk, but you can talk till your freaking ears fall off. And it's just, they're not going to get it. Right. Like, I mean, it's not, yeah. And that's fair. Like you have to live some of these things, and you have to be able to get knocked down, but you got to have that strength to get back up. But you can't, I could talk about all the mistakes I made. I mean, I talk about all the mistakes I made if you listen to all these podcasts, but I mean, you still have to do them as a person, right? Or else you won't live, you won't do anything. Right. And that's where I'm big on men. And that's the whole reason for myself anyway, trying to do all this, is because sure, I can't save you from those problems or those mishaps or those mistakes or those broken relationships or whatever that looks like. But at least we can, equip you with some tools to help you bounce back from those things a lot faster, right?
Yeah, and
even with relationships, right?
Well, I was going to say, because there's some things you can fuck things up and come back from them, and other things you can't. And that might be in a relationship. If you're with someone that you love and you go and shag someone else, it's not like at work we've made a mistake and people are like, oh, just don't do it again. That'll be, you're done, you're out, and that might be something that haunts you forever. But you're right, it is in those 20s. I was interested in no particular order, or maybe it is the right order. I was interested in girls, fitness, football, money, girls, girls, girls. That was it. That was my sole interest in my kind of teens, 20s, until I met the right girl. And then I wasn't interested in girls anymore, because I was like, okay, I've moved on to a new phase of my life. But yeah, like you could have shown me all that stuff back then. I'd been like, yeah, don't care, not interested. But suddenly at 35, I know there's the old saying of, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, which I've always liked. And then I heard one which was kind of also, when the what was it? Yeah, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. But then it is also that thing. At some point, you'll find other people that you learn from as well, and that's where the podcast came in. I mean, even with me with Brian Rose, as you obviously know, you've got a connection there as well. It was really the three podcasts. It was the Andy Murphy one, who's a friend of mine, James Swanwick, and then the London Reel that I consumed. I went from zero to a shitload of consumption, as much as I could, of all these different people, and that helped me make my move from working the city, because I was teetering on the brink. Like I was at the edge of the cliff of like, I'm going to leave, I'm not going to leave, I'm going to leave, I'm not going to leave, I'm going to leave. Hold on, what about the money? And then, that helped me get in the right mindset to one day be like, okay, even if if I don't leave now, how painful is it going to be in a year or 5 years time if I'm still doing the same thing? And that's always a strong question to ask, is, not just about now, but how bad is it going to be if you don't take action in 6 months, a year's time? And you're like, oh no, I've got to leave.
Oh yeah. And I mean, how painful is that teetering? I've done that. I did that for a year and a half. Right. And it's so painful on yourself, because you really start questioning yourself. You start thinking about like some of the judgments you make, and you really start to go back on things. You're like, well, did I make the right decision on something else that's completely unrelated? But I'm sitting there teetering on my career, and then on your relationship side too, right? Like, I know I talked to Laura nauseum about it, right? Like, hey, I think I'm going to quit this week. And then, a month later, it's like, hey, well, maybe I will, maybe I won't. And then like a
Yeah.
year later, she's like, okay, you got to freaking make a choice here. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But
Stop going
again,
on about it.
it really is, right? But
Right.
it always went back to me about like, okay, but it's a money thing, right? Like, it's like, okay, I'm going to leave, leaving a 6-figure job. Like, what am I? And,
Yeah.
had everything else. I had a vehicle, gas, phone, like everything was included in that. It's like, well, we're leaving quite a bit, but at the same time, it was just tearing me apart. And like I said, teetering back and forth was doing nobody any good. And then that's where myself anyway, my body just started to break down in the sense of I was very fortunate I didn't get sick, but I gained so much just fat, like belly fat, right? And just feeling so lethargic and just was not into anything. Which I guess kind of goes into my next thing with fitness, right? Like men, we just seem to let ourselves go at that almost at that point. I've seen it a lot now, and I guess you probably see it too, where we hit that certain age and it's you make that decision, right? Or it's like career, kids, fitness,
Yeah.
and a lot
I
of
mean,
people let the fitness slide.
kids that, I mean, there's a couple of tangents to that with guys. We see coping mechanisms and women as well, but we talk about guys here, but coping mechanisms, often not just one. A lot of people favor several, and don't get me wrong, I drink. I've never smoked. Well, I think I smoked a cigar once and was sick everywhere, so that was me done. But I drink now and again, but not very much. But I used to drink like just socially, but a lot. Your nights out were, of course, you're going to drink, and it's not are you going to, it's how much are you going to, and will you remember the next day. So for a lot of guys, you get those coping mechanisms, which of course, let's face it, long term aren't good for you. Alcohol, smoking, porn, working too much, exercising too much as well. And I found that I threw myself into the obstacle course racing because it gave me an outlet to focus on. So in a way, it was a good one because I was eating. I was probably quite boring in that respect, but I was eating really, really well. I was very careful with what I drank. I tried to be as healthy as I could, to the extent when my girlfriend at the time would get really, if she knew how to get at me. I remember once we had an argument and she poured my protein shake away. Like she knew that was how to get me. She could have done other stuff, but she's like, yeah, I just tipped that away, and she knew I wasn't impressed. But that's where I started with the obstacle course racing, was it gave me something else. It was like, okay, I know this isn't going well here, but I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll look over here. I'll focus on that, and I'll bury my head in the sand, which is, I reached a good level of fitness. But you do see a lot of guys that, especially when they're unhappy, the first thing sometimes go at is then it's the diet. So you're eating crap and drinking more, and then you're lethargic, then you're not exercising properly, you're taking care of yourself, and it's a kind of a snowball effect.
With that, I've been really trying to make a big point on. I've been doing this whole burpee challenge. Burpees has been a huge part of my life for ever, and I shouldn't say ever, for like last decade, and I don't know why. I fucking hate burpees, man. It's like the last thing. It's like burpees are terrible, but I've done I don't know tens of thousands now. But now I've for the last 3 months I've been doing 50 burpees every day. So in the morning I do 50 burpees every day, and trying to get my son involved a little bit more, right? And I have a whole group around it and a whole challenge around it with men, and then getting their kids involved with it. It's just so whether the kids do it with you, whether they do some of them, whether they're around just to count for you, just to be in that area, right? But
Yeah.
just to be with their dad, working out or doing something hard, right? Like I'm very fortunate because I grew up on a small farm, so whenever I see my dad, like pictures of my dad's been gone for quite a few years, but now any memories I really have of that guy was like working, like he's a hardworking guy, right? Like very, very hardworking, early in the morning, late at night, whatever that looked like to get things done. And again, that's not always healthy either, because we didn't have those like long romantic talks and all that kind of fun stuff. So I didn't get that. But at the same time, I remember my dad is like a very hardworking guy, got things done. And that's where I'm trying to circle it back to, like letting your kids be part of this, like watching you work out, watching you do something hard, and kind of having a commitment to that and staying integral to it, right? And I feel like that's where a lot of things go, and I'm sure that's where the Whole Man Academy really helps hold a lot of men accountable as well, right? And have integrity with yourself to be part of a group again, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's, you said the word accountability. It's a couple of the biggest things. We talk about how do you become fulfilled. I mean, that's, a long conversation, in one respect, but a lot of guys we found struggling with accountability, either because they're working from home, which of course is just like anything, it's good in some respects and it's bad in others, just like water, don't have any, it'll kill you, but have too much and it'll kill you. Um, and yeah, accountability, lack of focus, procrastination, especially with these around. And we've all done it. And I know I sit there sometimes and I'm like, right, I need to, let's say I'm going to have a look at your Instagram thing to message you. And then I'm like, hey, there's some football. Oh, look. And then suddenly, oh, there's some Formula One. And 5 minutes later, I'm like, what was I doing? Oh, yeah. And then, you've got me again. So many guys we saw having those, the mixture of things that kind of are there to grab your attention, which is a real struggle in itself. And I've had it as much as anybody. But I feel, especially in this last 2 years with these lockdowns, which let's just say I'm slightly cynical of their effectiveness. And we're seeing now the mental health problems with young kids, the mental health problems with different people, isolation with kills, which we know isolation is, the main form of punishment in prison. that there's a reason why being on your own is a punishment, because it does you in, to use an untechnical term. And so many guys we saw, some of them that were working from home lived on their own and were really lonely. And I saw guys who, if you saw them in the street or prior to that, they led vibrant social lives. And, just because they had a nice car, a nice suit, a nice watch, a nice house and good body, etc., they were lonely and quite sad living at home for all that time on their own. Then you had guys, I was example, who had kids. And when you were working from home, the kids didn't ask to be in your office. So you're like having a go at them saying, be quiet, shush, I'm trying to do a podcast or a Zoom call or a this or a that. And they're being kids, and kids should be noisy, and kids shouldn't be seen and not heard. They should be noisy and have fun and be, energetic and laughing and joking. So there's been some new challenges thrown at guys in these last 2 years, which I was going to say no one could have seen coming. But what I would say is that most people didn't see coming, and therefore they found it really hard to adapt.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, myself included, it took me a little while to find my rhythm. I got Lennox right now, only got one son, but we got another kid coming in a couple months, and that's exactly it. You got to find that rhythm, right? And where that works and how it works with him. And you nailed it with let the kids got to be a kid, man. And you got to let you got to let them run around, scream, holler, build stuff, bash things. We ran into it yesterday, wreck walls.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what they do, right? It's being a kid, and finally being okay with myself and having my nervous system freaking calm and actually doing what I enjoy. I was able to hit that at a lot better spot where, yeah, you wrecked the wall, and sure, I was mad and we had a little bit of a talk about it, but at the same time, I didn't blow up and like completely fly off the handle. Right. It was a civilized conversation of like, yeah, okay. But part of me had to remember like, hey, you're a kid, you wreck walls too. Like you have to make sure that you bring that into perspective and just let them be.
Being a dad, I talk to people about mindset, and I've I've never been someone that like flies off the handle anyways. I was always fairly level-headed, but I had my own let's call it like light bulb moment quite a few years ago, which helped me realize that it's up to me how I feel and outside inside thinking, etc., etc. But probably one of the hardest things for me has been dealing with the kids, because there's no reasoning with kids. At work, you didn't have people fucking about all the time. And if they did, you told them once and they stopped. And if you had a partner and you had a disagreement, you talked it out and you sorted it out. But with kids, they do something and they draw all over your office wall, or they break something and you're like, that's cost me loads of money, and they have no concept or of time or of money. They're just living in the moment. So that's been one of the hardest things for me, has been it sounds harsh, but like you can't control your kids like how you can control other people who are older and have got that sense of understanding how the world works. But then I have to laugh at it, because I'm just like, I'm about to lose my shit, and they're just like, hey, we're still playing and we're just hopping around like kangaroos. And I'm like, okay, you carry on. So it's been a learning curve for so many guys in this last 2 years, dealing with the home side of things with kids. But you said about the gym, we've got a really big home gym, which I'm really lucky to have. And, my boys see me out there a lot. So now, and they're only 4.5, nearly 5 and nearly 3. But the other day they came downstairs with their little gym stuff on, like, Dad, we want to come and work out with you. And Hudson, my eldest one, had got like his bottle of water. He'd got a little towel. He'd got his trainers on, and he'd got some crayons and stuff because he was going to write out. And he's like, "We need to go in the gym." So I gave him, the lightest dumbbells, and they did some little press ups and some battle rope and stuff like that. And they were just like, "We need to be in every day, Dad." And I was like, "That's great," because a lot of kids are on computers doing this all day long or all night, which is really, again, there's some benefits for computer games. There can be some learnings there, I'm sure. There's a really interesting TED talk on that. But so it's like anything, you can't be blanket, it's bad. But children sitting doing this, looking at a screen instead of being out running around fields and playing and using their imagination, unless you're have taken leave of your senses, you can't fail to see that the benefit of being outside in nature massively outweighs sitting looking at a screen with artificial light.
Oh, I know, and you kind of you made me feel good there because now I'm able to justify this in my own head. But like right now, I'm very fortunate. Like, oh, you're such a good dad, Mike. I got Lennox is outside because I've got my partner, little Laura. She's amazing, right? So I can't fuck it up regardless because like she's with Lennox outside right now playing in the sprinkler in the front yard, and he's getting some outside, getting some sun. He was building a bunch of stuff in the backyard before and doing like something to do with bugs and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
with that being said, he has his own laptop and he plays like Roblox or whatever it's called, right? Like he plays a lot of video games on it and does his thing, right? And
Yeah.
I mean, he can, but at the same time, he can still go outside and play and do all these things. And he knows, I don't know what that is. Maybe it's innately in him, and he's just very fortunate in that way, or part of our parenting, or just examples, or the whole gamut. But he can shut that thing off without too like. There's not like a big freak out or anything like that, and we can go play outside for hours on end and still have that, right? Where
Yeah, and there's the balance.
Yeah, you got to keep that balance, right?
Yeah, and we've seen because we're home educating the kids as well. So they're, as far as we're concerned, it's really funny because you say that and people are like, oh, okay, and most people haven't got a clue what it really means. So it's like anything. It's like me trying to talk to someone about how to build a spaceship, and I'm like, I can have an opinion, but I haven't got a clue what I'm actually talking about. And it's like a lot of things in the world these days. A lot of people have an opinion, which is great, but you'll be like, well, have you actually done any research on it? And they'll be like, no, but I saw in the newspapers, and you're like, okay, so you can have an opinion, but you don't know what you're talking about. And it's the same with home educating. But for us, it's very much finding what the kids enjoy and letting them do more of it. But realizing that technology is going to be part of their life, whether we like it or not. So having them completely green to it probably isn't going to help them. So there are some really good like learning stuff you can find online that we let the kids kind of watch and play. And of course, if you're watching stuff to do with nature, and the boys love building and diggers and stuff, they would happily watch that for ages. It's the how can I put it? Disney won't be entering their Disney won't be entering their brains with its hidden messages for quite a long time.
Oh, that's great, and we're very fortunate too. We're homeschooling Lennox, and it's really good to be well, I shouldn't say in control, and no one's ever in control of anything, but just being in control of what he's learning, right? Or like what he's taking in, and it's not sit down at a desk for 6 hours, and if you can't do that, then we're going to give you this medication to numb you out, right? It's like he can do whatever he's going to do, and if he finds, we've been going in phases, right? Like so right now he was really big on bugs for the last couple, I don't know, call it a week, we'll call it, and you could just go all in on bugs. Like we got library books, we get playing outside, doing all kinds of stuff, watching YouTube videos on it, and just all in. And that's his schooling. That's what he's doing. That's what he's learning, right? He's not get to do that, get to be really excited for half an hour, and then, oh, now we're going to learn math, or now we're going to learn something else. It's like
this. You're like, no, come on, you've got to go.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So now he gets to really immerse himself, and the freaking kid knows lots about that now, right? And it kind of sticks. Yep. So then whatever happens in the next couple of weeks, then we'll do that one and do that one and move on. And I did want to talk a little bit about homeschooling on here, because a lot of men, you nailed it with the whole preconception of, not knowing kids are going to be weird, social stuff. And I've all that stuff has been blown out of the water for me, because I was that guy. I was like, the kid's not going to be homeschooled. He's going to be a little weirdo. Yeah. But now knowing and seeing him out in the real world and watching him interact with adults and have confidence with adults and be able to look at them in the eye when he's talking, or when he's out with other kids, like he's in jujitsu. So when we're in jujitsu class, watching him like line up and stand at attention. Well, the world is chaos around him. All these other kids are screaming, yelling, running into the walls, doing all kinds of stuff. And he's standing there at attention because the coach said, hey, stand at attention till I
Yeah.
say otherwise. Right. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just these little things that really start to make a lot of sense. It's like, okay, maybe there's a reason why they push school so hard, eh? Or like want us to be in these boxes that it's like, oh, okay. So he's like a little free thinker and he can do what he wants and knows when to be respectful, but knows when to be a kid at the same time, right? It's just
Yeah.
all these things.
No, it's, there's multiple things with home educating. And again, I was exactly the same. My partner was the first one that said to me about it, and I was like, "What? No!" And then I have to rein my own. You're in indoctrination in, just like with so much that goes on in the world, where we all have our initial reaction, and then you're like, "Oh no, well actually, yeah, no, oh that's a good point." And then you do a bit more research. You go, "Oh, actually, I didn't know anything about it, and I was wrong." And the common things are, oh well, the funniest one is, oh well, how will they get to qualify for university? And you're like, who says any kid needs to go to university? I mean, a lot of people we know come out university with fucking massive debts and still not exactly knowing what they want to do. Whereas for us, it's like if you bring up young entrepreneurs and they learn from a young age about how money really works and not being taught that you need to be a worker bee, that would be a good start. But the other one is about interaction. People worry about the kids, and you say, well, you put let's say a class of 20 kids. If they're all 6 years old, they're not going to learn from each other because 6-year-olds don't learn from each other. And my example is, if you started a business, would you want to start a business if you could have 5 people starting a business? If you had them all 20-year-olds, or if you had a 20-year-old, a 30-year-old, a 45, a 50, and a 60-year-old, for example, you'd all bring different strengths, to the party. And with our boys, like tomorrow they'll be have a mixture of like a music lesson. They'll be out with a group of about 6 or 7 other kids, ranging from 3 up to about sometimes 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, where the 12-year-old is learning to nurture the younger kids, and the younger kids are learning to do the cool stuff that the older kids are doing. And that's one of the common things people worry about. But actually, if you find the little community around you, you don't need a massive load of people. You probably need a little group of people that hopefully think like you. And one of the big things is, one of the ladies who helps us says, when the kids are coming to her to learn for the day, she's like, please don't let them watch TV in the mornings before they come along, because it basically fucks their imagination. And I was like, yep, I get it. Whereas, I understand other people, that's up to them if they let their kids watch TV, and ours watch like educational stuff. But it's interesting how she was insistent. I mean, she's quite a mature lady, and she's been around the block and knows exactly how this affects kids. And she's like, just please do not let them watch TV on days when they're seeing us, because it will numb their imagination. And you're like, fair enough.
Yeah, no, that's great. And again, you nailed it with community, right? Like as long as we have a community of people that are all trying to bring the best out of everybody, then it's a safe place to be, and it's a great place to be. Because with Lennox, same thing with homeschooling. He's got a group of like homeschool kids that he hangs out with, and man, they do more activities there together than I ever did in school. Like it doesn't compute once I actually know the facts and actually part of it. And it's like, oh, like this is great. But again, I know it takes certain parents too, right? Like you have to be on top of things, like for one, and you got to be aware of well, you just got to be aware of the world and what's happening and what's going on, and you got to be present. Where most people, it's so easy to be numb and just not present, right? So you have to be present with your kids. But I mean, the payoff is it's ridiculous. I was going to be a question for you, right? Like the effects that I see on my son are it's astronomical. I'm jealous of him at times, right? Of like, man, you were like, the world is your oyster, buddy, and you got like all these tools you're getting, and you get to be whatever you want to be, and you're so strong and you're smart already and like healthy and all these things, right? It's amazing to see, and it's awesome to be part of. What are some of the effects that you've seen on your boys already, like such a young age?
Yeah, it's confidence to speak to older people as well, which I was think is great. We were on holiday in the UK last year, and Hudson was only 4 and a bit at that point, and we were in a pub garden. And he was like, "Oh, I want to get I want a glass of sparkling water," and I was like, "Well, go into the bar and ask for it." And he looked around, and I said, "Listen, go into the bar up there," and obviously the bar's much higher than him. I said, wait behind that guy because he's waiting, and ask the barman. And he kind of shuffled off and he walked in on his own and he stood behind the guy. And this, customer left and Hudson stood there and the guy hadn't seen him. So Hudson went round and the guy leant over, was like, yeah. And he said, oh, I want a glass of sparkling water, please. And can I have a menu? And the guy was like, what a funny little guy. And we're like, we want him to have that confidence that we kind of encourage him to do all that stuff. So we're not, holding his hand all the time. Plus with tools, I mean, there's a limit to what you want your kids to do for health and safety, as it were. But, we encourage him to, he uses the drill with me. He uses this saw. He uses the different things. And he's always out cutting things because the sooner he learns, with decent supervision. So it's having that little confidence as a kid, but also for us, imagine a life where you never have homework. And we know
exactly.
people who have got kids his age who, in their first year of kind of junior school are like, oh, they have to come home and do homework like a couple of nights a week. And they're at school from, 9 till 3, then they have to come back and do stuff. And we're like, you'll never have to do, I mean, he doesn't understand, but you'll never have to do that. Tonight, they're out on the trampoline and then they're watering they're learning how to grow plants or grow vegetables, and they've got their own little stuff to water. And he's out there measuring it and watering it and cutting up cardboard. You're not sitting at home going, oh, I don't want to do this. You're like, learn when you want to learn.
Oh yeah, exactly. And I mean, I wish I had that myself because I would have flourished in that. My mind, I got all kinds of stuff that's not conducive to school learning, right? Like it just doesn't work that way. But out in the real world, out in real world learning, and again, I got lucky because I grew up on a farm, so I got the part of that, some of that, but I still had to get through school somehow, right? And was able to somehow make it through. And that's the other shining example I use all the time. It's like I made it through high school. They got me through high school, and like I could. I probably had no business getting through high school, but they pushed me through that. Where these homeschool kids, like I know some that are grade 5, grade 6, they could pass a GED, like the equivalency exam, and with their eyes shut. Like it's not even, it's a joke, right?
The big question is, for all of us, I don't know anybody of my age that didn't go to school, so it's hard to compare. But I've then found people that I've watched podcasts and YouTube videos and internet, kind of brings you some interesting people. And I would say that if I picked the people in my life now that I've never met, but I listen to a lot, that have the best handle on how the world works, and I guarantee it's not how most people think it works, but how the world works, they all say, number one is don't ever send your kids to school. That is, you put the stake in the ground, doesn't matter how hard it is, you don't send your kids to school. Now, again, we know it is hard, especially if you're a single parent, because how you got to earn money unless you've, none of us have got a bottomless pit. So we've had to make sacrifices as we do, because, for Emma, if Emma's looking after the kids, she can't work whilst I am. And if she has to work, as she's a naturopathic nutritionist, so she, schedules consultations, we either have to find someone like my parents or my sister or her family, etc., or I have to take time off work to do that. But then does that come back to what importance is earning lots of money? And that kind of then goes on to the breakdown of the family unit, which is where, so much of equality has been pushed on women to go out and work and take that career. And actually, what if, ultimately your career could have been staying at home, bringing up a little warrior, be it boy or girl. But we're so pushed that to achieve what we should be shown as in life, having all the trappings of success, that you should both go out to work so you can earn more money to buy all the stuff you need to buy: a bigger house, a bigger car, better holidays, nicer clothes, shoes, handbag, tick, 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 tick. Whereas maybe life shouldn't be like that. And they're called trappings because they are trappings of success. They trap you.
Exactly. And we could go on for this for days, but I guess we better wrap up here soon. But I mean, as you're saying that, I was like, yeah, it's easy for you to say, and I'm very fortunate, easy for me to say, right? Like I know now, unless I made $500,000, like my life isn't really that different in that scenario. I've made enough money in my career, in my life, to know that like if I make that X amount of dollars, it's not going to change. My lifestyle is not going to change. I'm not going to even, if I made 300,000, I'm not going to be driving a Ferrari. I'm not going to be doing all these things, right? Like be a little bit more comfortable, but nothing's really going to shift in that way. Like, so having Laura out working, having me out working, stressed to the nines, isn't gonna, unless we're making, $1 million, our life isn't gonna change. But we're gonna be so stressed out. We're not gonna have time with our kids. We're not gonna have time for ourselves. There's so many things that go down the wayside with that, right? So, I mean, pushing so hard to make a few dollars so you can have an RV, so you can go out once a year and have a time and be stressed out that whole time is not.
Well, you know yourself, like a lot of things, you get one chance at life, but you get one chance with your kids when they're young. And you really get, let's just pick 18 years with your kids before they leave home, if you kind of pick a number. So, for 5 years, Hudson has never known a day where I'm not either with him for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or two or one of the three, if that makes sense. Whereas if I'd have worked in the city, I would have been probably earning more money. I'd have been a lot more stressed. And I would have left home at 6 o'clock every morning, and I would have got home at between 6 and 7, maybe, of a night, if I wasn't out with clients. So I would see him not at all in the morning, obviously not through the day, and I'd probably get home an hour before bed. And sometimes I probably wouldn't have wanted to have had that hour with him, because you'd be like, you need to de-stress yourself or go to the gym. And then at weekends, I know some dads that are like, I want to go to the gym and I want to have a bit of time on my own, but then my partner's like, well, you've been out all fucking week, so I want you to look after the kids. So I'm not the best dad, because I'm like forced to, I've got a day and a half with them. So again, it's not easy, and we've had struggles with it before, but for the kids, they don't give a shit about cars. They don't care about money. They don't care about anything. They care about attention from mum and dad and love. And that's all when you're home educating, if you can give them that to start with, there's the saying of like, show me the, boy until he's 7 and I'll show you the man. And if you can raise a boy that's conscientious, that, is strong-willed and, ticks all these different boxes, even if you ease off the time you're with them, once they reach 7 or 8 or 9, you've kind of at least done your job as much as you can in the early years.
Oh man, you touched on so much of that, and I think that's a great way to wrap that up. I mean, we've touched on a lot of topics here. I think there's 2 or 3 more of these talks can be in it, because there's just so much in that. But
Yeah, happy to.
But yeah, let's let you go. But if anyone wants to find out more about you and everything you got going on, where can they do that?
Yeah, so there's a couple of, we've got multiple resources for men. We have an e-letter, 2 online courses now. We have our Instagram. We've got our 1-day retreat, a 3-day retreat, or we do mentoring. So it's a whole mixture of things. But to find out more, you can just go to our website, which is unsurprisingly www.wholemanacademy.com. And there's multiple ways to connect with us, basically.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, like I said, it was great having you on here, Anthony, and we'll probably see you again shortly.
I look forward to it. Lovely stuff.
Thanks for listening. Check out our offerings on social media at The Revived Couple and online at therevivedcouple.com. Have a request for a show topic? We love that. Send us an email at michael@larocklife.com or DM at The Revived Couple.
And don't forget to rate, subscribe, and review.